Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruver. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey everybody, it's time for another episode of What's on Your Desk? Welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I am Kathy Gruver, and we are so thrilled to have you here. Happy 2020. We have so many amazing things that we want to talk about. But, you know, I was cleaning the other day, because occasionally I have to do that. And I was noticing, occasionally, not
You don't have to clean, but it sure makes it nicer.
Yeah, and we're not doing an episode on cleaning, though that would please my mother greatly. I noticed I had some things on my desk, and for the average person, like if they looked at what was on my desk, they'd wonder, why the heck does Kathy have all this crap on her desk? But we all surround ourselves with things that make us feel comfortable. We surround ourselves with things that remind us of people or ideas or ideals. And so we thought it would be interesting today to talk about what is on our desk and why we have that there, what it reminds us of.
Well, and I think it's important because I'm the same way. If people walked into my office, they'd kind of be like, it's this eclectic little thing. And I've got literally like a whole box of knickknacks out in the garage that I don't have place to put anywhere in this house. Plus my wife would kill me, but if I got them all out. Right. But I have a few things, and I think, you know, we all do this, but I think one of the reasons why we want to talk about this is, if you think about, you know, you probably heard like Jim Rohn used to say, right, we're a composition of the 5 people that we hang around with the most. Okay. And so having little things, totems, yeah, I know, it's like, don't go there right now. Having little things, you know, totems, some people call them, other things like that remind us of certain things is kind of like that, you know, as well, that the more that we can surround ourselves with things and people that help us be our best self, that's going to help us. So that's why we wanted to talk about it, and maybe, you know, you'll see a little how we are too, I guess, by some of the weird stuff we have on our desks. Oh, okay.
I think our viewers know by now
that we're a little different. Yeah.
I'm going to say this is our 57th episode or something. I think
it's 50 something, close to 60.
I think they've noticed.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So Kathy, you want to go first?
Yes. Okay. So I don't remember where this came from, but I have "The Future Always Starts Now" postcard taped to my desk, because it's a reminder to me that we always have the ability we can't change the past, but we can alter the present to make the future different. And so this reminds me not only to stay present, because it talks about starting now, but at any given point, we can make a different choice. With every exhale, we can make a different choice about how we want to shape our future. And having this there just sort of reminds me that I am creating my reality. I am creating what's going to come next. So I love I'm not a big words person. I tend to not have words. I tend to have more symbols, but this just resonated. So it's been taped up. Clearly it's got like 30 different pieces of tape. It's been taped up a lot. So I love this reminder.
Well, and it is a good reminder because, again, you know, a lot of times people get stuck because they're, you know, worry is more about the future, I guess. Maybe regret is more about the past. And so, you know, so much of the time we sit there and we regret what happened in the past, and we just kind of stay here. And again, it's like that slap in the face of, but you know what? Your future can be what you make it, and your future starts now. So if you want your future to be different, start now.
Change your present.
Change your present, right? And you'll be able to get there to the future. Yeah. So, good.
So some wise words.
Good point. Good point. Good point.
What about you? What's yours?
All right. So first one here, the closest one to me is dun, 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 dun. It's the Yoda, right?
You're such a nerd.
So again, I am a nerd, right? That's probably, I mean, you can tell because I have a Yoda on my desk that I'm a little bit of a nerd, right? But it's you know, I've always loved the character Yoda. And one of the things that I try to be is wise. And so to me, Yoda represents this wisdom this being that didn't really talk very much, but when he talked,
Right.
you want to listen. And sometimes when he talked, you were sitting there kind of shaking your head like, what the fuck is he saying? Right
He
at
didn't talk
first.
much or well, but he.
Yeah, right. And I also love the imagery of it too, that here he was, this very small creature
Mm,
in stature, but very powerful.
yeah.
Right. And one of the lines from the movie that I love is, judge me by my size, do you?
Hmm.
And then he whips out his lightsaber and he starts kicking everybody's ass, right? That, again, even though we may be small, we can be mighty.
Yeah.
And we can, he was a Jedi trainer that we can train to become our best self. We can become a Jedi, if you will, by taking and doing those things that we need to. So Yoda's on my desk to remind me at times when I'm kind of feeling small and
Mm.
like maybe I can't do it, or I'm not as smart as I should be, that he reminds me to be wise and to be mighty.
Well, and that's a great point too, because you never know where that wisdom is going to come from. And half the time, I think we learn the most from animals or children, or
Mhm.
so that reminder on there that that we all have that wisdom and that power inside of ourselves is fabulous. So I'm a nerd too. I don't have a Yoda, but
Dun, 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 dun,
I've got
dun.
Mr. Miyagi.
Mr. Miyagi, wax
So
on, wax off.
I was first of all, I love Karate Kid because I had a giant crush on Ralph Macchio, but that's a whole nother episode. Who our childhood crushes were. That would be
Oh boy.
disturbing
Uh,
and enlightening, I think. But I've got Mr. Miyagi for a couple same reason you have Yoda. It's that reminder to stay present. It's that reminder to focus on what you want, not what you don't want, that sort of thing. But also, Mr. Miyagi was a character who taught Daniel through practicality. Like, he didn't sit him down and teach him martial arts. He taught him how to wax on, wax off, and wash the car and scrape the floor, and you do all this stuff. And the other thing this reminds me of is the friend who gave this to me. He and I were having a conversation back and forth about wisdom and da 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 da. And he said something about Mr. Miyagi, and I said, that's very wise. If you could actually give me a Mr. Miyagi so I could carry that wisdom with me. And about 3 days later, this showed up in the mail. So it was that reminder of people who do think about you and want you to move forward and like accomplish things and achieve things. And it was just so funny because I had made this just sort of general ask of, oh, if you could just send me a Mr. Miyagi. I didn't even know this existed. Like, I met conceptually, and this showed up. So I used to travel with this, and I took pictures of it all over the world. So I had this little scene with
kind of
the
like the
seatbelt. I had
elf
it
in
in
the
front of.
shelf.
Yeah, I used to keep it in my purse, and when I traveled places, I would take pictures of historic sites with Mr. Miyagi in front of it. But anyway, so yeah, so this is my Yoda. So that's
Well, and it's I think the Mr. Miyagi character too, like you said, he taught Daniel through practicality. But I think, again, it's a reminder to all of us. There Daniel was washing the car, painting the fence, sanding the floor, and he's thinking, I'm just doing all these chores for this old man. He's not even teaching me karate.
right.
But he was making a lot of progress without actually realizing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good reminder for all of us that, we accomplish far less in a day than we think we can, but in 3 months or a year, we accomplish way more than we would expect. And a lot of times it's what seems to be the mundane things, like sanding the floor, painting the fence, doing your daily affirmations, doing some meditation, doing
Yeah.
some self hypnosis, eating better. And we don't notice how much we're growing in the short term until, that I love that scene, where Daniel's just pissed. He's like, come on, teach me karate. He's like, oh, I show you, sand the floor. And he's like, hi, 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 and he keeps blocking him.
Such a great scene.
And I think, at that point, again, it's just that reminder of all that little work that we do makes a huge difference, because when we get into that situation, when we need it, it's there, even though we don't realize it. So.
Yes, and I think it also has to do with trust. because he kept doing the tasks until that final scene where he's like, okay, I'm done, I'm out. Like, well, I don't get. And it's also about progress. And you touched on it. You said, we get further in those 3 months. And I've had clients who come into my office in pain and they're at a 10 or a 9 and they can't even. I had one woman who couldn't even stand in the shower for 10 minutes without having to like stop and rest and sit down. She couldn't go grocery shopping. She had to stop on the cart for 5 or 10 minutes and rest because her back was so bad. And after a couple of weeks of the massage and the stretching and the chiropractic, I said, how you doing? She goes, man, I'm not getting any better. I mean, I could only play basketball with my kids for 20 minutes today. And I went,
only 20 minutes? Yeah.
I said, you used to not be able to walk around the grocery store. You used to not be able to take a shower. You're now playing 20 minutes of basketball with your kids. And she went, yeah. I mean, like she didn't, excuse me, she didn't realize that progression. I thought that was fabulous that, this is why we do the scale of 1 to 10, because you don't necessarily know that you're making that progress. Just like when you've not seen someone for a while and you're like, oh my God, you're so tall, or your hair's so long, or you lost all this weight. You don't see that on a daily basis. You see that over time. So that's what my little Miyagi's for.
Mr. Miyagi. Lovely. All right. So what am I going to pick next? I don't know how many we're going to end up doing. So here, I'll maybe do this one.
A fidget spinner.
I know you used to see these everywhere, right? Because for a little while they were the craze. They had to like ban them at schools because the kids were just like playing with them all the time. But I have a fidget spinner and it's actually a colorful one, right? Because I like color. But why I have this sitting here is because I sit a lot in my desk. And, as we're, doing videos or doing work, a lot of times we need to kind of shake things up a little bit. So we end up getting, because again, most of the time, after about 15 or 20 minutes, we get kind of stuck in whatever we're doing. So that's why getting up, moving around, doing something, especially when you think about the brain, if we've been doing something very much that's left brain centric, sometimes we kind of get locked up in that brain and we can't think, we don't know what it is to do. And so we have to, I think it's called cross hemisphering or something like that, where we try to get something over into the right brain, even for just a minute, to be able to help you reset what you're doing. And so, people that are listening, you may have done this, right? Where you're sitting there, you're like thinking, trying to solve some problem and you just can't solve it. And then you get up and you go take a shower, and in the middle of the shower you go, ding, there's the answer, right? This is what we're talking about. It's kind of that switching, kind of thing. And so the fidget spinner helps me a little bit because, again, as I'm sitting here, maybe talking with a client for an hour, I can pick up this fidget spinner and out of camera view, you can't see it right now, but I'm doing this, right? And so this little movement of my body actually helps me to kind of recalibrate as well and keep going.
That's great. And it's interesting because I had a massage client, excuse me, ask yesterday. He said, I find myself shaking my leg a lot, like spastically shaking my leg when I'm at my desk. And I said, well, does it bother you? Is it hurting your knee? Is it hurting your leg? He's like, no, I just know that I should be doing that. And I said, it could just be a nervous habit. I said, but also sometimes in moving our body like that, it calms us down to the point where we can focus. When I was working for the documentary film company, we did an hour episode on autism. We went to an autism camp. Now these kids are so not, and if you gave them if you gave them an activity with their hands specifically, so we used to give them trays of shaving cream and they would play in the shaving cream, that sensory activity, or if you would spin them really fast, that would give them focus. So I think it's the same thing as the fidget spinner or this guy shaking his leg. And he goes, yeah, I actually concentrate better with my leg going. So for some reason, it takes that nervous energy to this one specific part and allows your brain to just focus on that thing. So I think that's great. I actually have a fidget spinner as well. Mine has different colors. And so when you spin it, it looks like a kaleidoscope. And I use it as an induction tool for hypnosis.
Oh, wow.
It's really cool.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, and I think it's good too. It's like my son had some learning issues, right? And a lot of times, like again, in a traditional school setting, you're expected to sit, feet on the floor, hands on your desk, kind of thing, not moving. And for a lot of people like him, if he was chewing gum or doing some other bodily activity as well, because he's very kinesthetic, it actually helps to kind of relax you and allow you to work on the other stuff, just like you said with those autistic kids, and so, doing some of these little things like that, it's all right. You can even go, if your legs are crossed, cross them the other way.
Yeah.
Well, just by doing that, it ends up kind of rebooting your brain, if you will, and helping you to kind of keep going. So
exactly. All right. So I had pulled a couple things, but I don't want to do that. I'm going to stand up and get another thing. Because this keeps coming back. This is a recurring theme.
Hello, Snow White.
Hello. So for those of you who have not tuned into the multiple episodes where we've talked about Snow White, so when I was in my coaching training, we went around the room and people shouted out traits that they saw in you. And then we got into groups and we talked about what traits people would like to see in you. And for some reason, people thought I was a hard ass. I don't know. So fuck those people. But no, what about that idea? No.
Smackdown.
Right, I'm gonna kick their ass. No, so they wanted to see the more sensitive, vulnerable, like emotional side, which I have a huge one of. I'm incredibly empathetic and I cry at everything. But not in that setting. The ego state that I was bringing forward was very business as usual, get your shit done, Kathy. And so they wanted to see more of that. And so I had to spend the rest of the day being Snow White. So when I was walking through CVS several weeks ago, actually, by this point, and I saw this doll, it's a Barbie kind of thing. It's Disney Princess, Royal Shimmer. But I was like, okay, I need to put this on my desk. So this just reminds me not only that we have choices in what ego state we bring forward, and we've talked about this multiple times, but it also does remind me to sort of soften a bit and to let my sensitive side out in business, because I think that's okay. I mean, we can't cry at the drop of a hat, but we do have the ability to mesh all of our personality types, mesh all of our ego states, and bring that sensitivity out. I was going to do the unicorn that poops chocolate, but what does that mean? And I got a skunk. I got all sorts of crap on my desk. But
we're going to have to do another episode anyway, because we've got lots of other stuff. And I think this is actually, it's a great way of bringing up kind of some practical things people can do, but also talk about lots of different topics at the same time, and kind of why these things are important, because they're still all things that we're trying to talk about for unlocking potential.
Exactly. And we can anchor these things. I mean, I've had clients anchor things on their desk so that when they look at that thing, it reminds them, oh, I should breathe, or, oh, that takes me back to the beach, or, oh, whatever it is. Maybe it's a person. I mean, I have a picture of my dad on my desk. I have an old Christmas card from him because it reminds me of him and the love he had for me, and it makes me feel a little closer. So it's like we set our space. We surround ourselves with things that trigger things in us. So not only should it kind of be clutter-free, which I can't say it is right now, you want it organized however that works for you, whether it's piles or files or drawers, but also surround yourself with things, even if it's one little touchstone, one little thing that reminds you to be productive, to be happy, to be healthy, to bring out those states in yourself that you don't maybe always have but would like to have.
Well, and actually, because you brought up anchoring, right? Yeah. So here's another one that I have. It's a little badass button.
I love it.
Okay. And so it actually makes noise too, right? When you click it, because it's like the Staples Easy button kind of thing, right? So
you are a badass.
So that's one of the things that it says, right? This was actually there's that book, You're a Badass. It's Jan Sincero, or I'm going to say her last name wrong, but she wrote a book, You're a Badass. She's got a couple of different badass books that I've gone through and read. And again, it's a lot of that reminder of kind of pumping yourself up, that a lot of times we don't realize how badass we really are.
Yeah.
And we just need to remind ourselves of that. So, my wife got me one of her other books, and she found this little button. So I have it sitting on my desk because, again, if there's times when maybe I'm feeling a little down, I reach over and I hit the button.
You can do it.
And that one says, you can do it, right? You can do it. I mean, she had a fun time, I'm sure,
I'm
recording
sure.
all the stuff for it. But it's
Great.
so it can be used as a reminder that way, but I've also used it as an anchoring technique. So we've talked, I think, a little bit before about anchoring on the show, right? It's like, doing something that you normally don't do
Yeah.
as a way to anchor a feeling, to
Mhm.
anchor something, right? And so again, a lot of times after I say and write my belief statements in the morning, I'll reach over and at the end of it, hit that badass button as a way to kind of anchor what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Mike Mandel talked about it, doing things like putting your
Yeah.
your
I do
ring
this all the
finger,
time.
ring
My
finger
awesome
and your
anchor.
thumb together, your
Yep.
awesome anchor, right? Because by doing that, it actually anchors. And so, I mean, this from like hypnosis too, right? I mean, you induct yourself into a hypnotic state, and
Mhm.
you could use things like the spinner to do it.
Yeah.
You're walking downstairs, whatever it is, but it's an induction kind of anchor to help you get to that point. And so the same thing, like one of the self-hypnosis ones that I've used, starts off with, closing your eyes and getting you to say the word yes.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of it, every time you hear the word yes, you will go deeper into trance and you will relax. And every time you hear yes, every time you hear yes. So guess what? By going through that program so many times, if I'm freaking out, I just need to close my eyes and say yes to myself a few times, and it anchors myself back to that calm trance relaxation kind of state.
Right.
Because I've trained myself. Here we are, Daniel and Mr. Miyagi,
Yep.
right? I've kind of trained myself and anchored some of those things to whatever that happens to be. So anchoring is actually a good thing for you to be able to kind of relive and get back to whatever it is that you're trying to do.
Yep. I'm just looking around my desk at all the different things because I'm also facing a bookcase. So I've got, it's like everything reminds us of something. Everything anchors us into something. So of course, once again, we've blown through our 20 minutes. I think this was a fun show. So I think we should go out with one of the other things on my desk because it's just goofy.
Is it a goofy? No,
I don't want to.
It's just goofy.
It's goofy. So this is my little dancing guy. So I think as the show goes out, we should just remind ourselves to do a little chair dancing. All right, and we'll see you next time. I'm Kathy Gruver. I can be reached at kathygruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So go out, dance in your chair, unlock your potential, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. See ya.